I know. I call the meeting of the North Syracuse Central School District Board of Education to order. Please rise and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Going to begin with a moment of silence for the following. Douglas Holbrook, a graduate of the North Syracuse Central School District. Frank Ziola, a graduate of the North Syracuse Central School District. And Candace Burnett, a graduate of the North Syracuse Central School District. Thank you. Okay, we have a proclamation to begin tonight. For occupational therapists, we have some here. Throughout our school buildings, occupational therapists have an impact on the district's students and families. They have accepted this exceptional responsibility with commitment, dedication, and love. School occupational therapists for the North Syracuse Central School District are professionals of the highest caliber, and they have dedicated themselves to the ideals of their profession. Students, parents, administrators, and community members recognize, applaud, and appreciate their efforts to ensure students receive a quality service. To honor a school occupational therapist of the North Syracuse Central School District and their accomplishments, I, Paul Farfalia, President of the Board of Education of the North Syracuse Central School District, on behalf of the board, express our deepest gratitude and hereby declare April 20th, 2022 as School Occupational Therapist Appreciation Day to be celebrated with appropriate educational activities. If I could get a second for that, second from Mr. Crabtree. All in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Thank you very much. Sure.
That's how we work at the
Oh, wait.
preschool.
At this time, we'd like to recognize all the occupational therapists that are here, and I'm going to have John Curla.
They're going to
I will have-
introduce themselves and where they, as are normal, they're going to introduce themselves
And their
to the board
locations.
and their locations.
Perfect. I'm going to turn the mic over.
I'm Jennifer Slusser, and I work at the North Syracuse Early Education Program.
I'm Erin Lynn, and I work at the North Syracuse Early Education Program.
I'm Lisa Searles. I work at Roxborough Road Middle School.
I'm Lee Jackman. I cover CNS St. Rose and Smith Road.
I'm Kara Benaxis. I'm Emily Sub at CNS St. Rose and Smith Road.
Lauren Sweeney, occupational therapist at Smith Road.
Courtney Sprague. I'm at Bear Road.
Carrie Frisina, Roxborough Elementary.
On behalf of the Board of Education, we'd like to say thank you, and we appreciate you coming out this evening. And we want to make sure that we are recognizing you for all your hard work, and thank you for coming out here tonight.
Thank you. Okay, we have a presentation on the proposed budget for 22-23. Mr. Keegan.
Don, do you want a handheld mic or which one?
Good evening. I'm gonna, as I have done each of the last several weeks, I'm gonna turn it over to Superintendent Bowles to kind of lead us off.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Keegan. As we've said in the past, some of the focus areas for the budget were as follows: ELA and literacy, social emotional learning, health and safety, mathematics, diversity, equity, inclusion, ENL, instructional and operational leadership, energy performance, and capital project to replace the chillers at the junior high. Again, this budget has really stretched our resources as we attempt to recover from COVID-19. We are relying heavily on using fund balance to support the programming. We are proposing a tax levy of 3.37, and we're proposing that the district stay within the tax cap. Inflation has resulted in higher than expected growth in budgeted items, and we are supplementing the general fund spending with federal funds. We've talked about the Cursa and ARP. Some of the things that we've talked about as far as budget proposals, there is a new ELA adoption where we were piloting 2 programs. We've gone through this prior, but to support the literacy program, we are adding some additional coaches in order to support each individual building. We've been adding some pictures of some things, and this was part of the summer reading. And if you remember Book Van Gogh, we have some teachers in the background, but one of our retired teachers, Sue Straub, was going around to neighborhoods and offering families and students reading materials. As we move on, we're talking about SEL. And over the past 4 years, the district has hired 16.5 professionals. You did see that we received some news last week as far as on television, as far as mental health and what we were doing with suicide prevention. And our goal is to make sure that all students and or families would have access to a professional in the event of a crisis or in need. So that's what we have done, and we are proposing for the next school year an additional social worker at Allen Road. That's to help with the 811 program that's there, so that there would be a dedicated person for the 811 program and a dedicated person for the building. Also looking at a social worker for our junior high school. They still only have 1 FTE social worker at the junior high, and it's just a grade level that needs a lot of attention. So we're proposing a second social worker for that building. So we also, again, at the bottom start, we still have Liberty Resources, Promise Zone Specialist, and Access, and that's dealing with tier 1, 2, and 3 support, and that was added from the county. Again, we're trying to add some pictures here to show you some of the SEL situations. And again, the bottom picture, we have 2 of our students that were with me at the high school the other day when Iris St. Moran was doing the interview. And again, that was Sam Reppy and Hannah Boyle. So the picture is, again, Chalk the Walk. And we had students writing nice messages. So the budget proposal, health and safety of learning environments. We increased our nursing staff by 5 FTE. We also hired a nursing supervisor to assist with all of the intricacies that the nursing staff need in the overall scope of the health office. We've added an SRO and hall monitoring at the secondary schools to address increased behavioral issues. Upgraded air filters, increased fresh air exchanges per hour, and focused on disinfecting. And for the 22-23, we're proposing adding an additional security guard to be stationed at the junior high school. The budget proposal for mathematics is the same as what you've seen in previous weeks. New math director, dedicated math coach, AIS teachers to support students. We have a lot of challenges in math, as you've seen from the data. Some of the elementary data that you've been seeing as far as the BPT, and you're looking at some of the Ames Web data, and we are trying to have a focus on that as well. And if we continue, we want to see more students going from the red into the green. We've talked about DEI, and we're working with, again, Syracuse University, book study with about at least 50 other districts. We are asking BOCES, because we're subscribing to a COSER, to do some of that DEI work for us, and they're going to start with some meetings and assessments. We will be working with them on a survey that would need to go out to assess the needs of the district, looking at conferences and looking at professional development for in-district support. English as a new language. I think this was the shocker of the year when you saw the numbers from 2007 to now, from 28 to 272. You see all the different languages that we are supporting, and we are going to be expanding to a third elementary school. Again, the increase in staffing has been significant over the last few years. Given some of the crisis that may be in other locations of the world, usually probably within a year or two, there starts to be an influx. They may start out heading to Syracuse City, but that has been a trend over the years when there's been countries in crisis. And here's some images of some of our ENL students. One of the other things that we were provided for you was an addition of an assistant principal at each middle school. Things have been very difficult, so we brought some numbers to you to show you the ratios of student to staff, student to administrator ratios in our middle schools. At the time, Gillette Road had the highest student to administrator ratio in the county. So with that being said, we were proposing that addition and trying to be able to manage a lot of the behaviors that have come within the last 2 years due to some of the issues due to COVID. So it's not only middle schools. You've seen, based on documentation, behaviors not only in North Syracuse, but in other districts have been unprecedented as a result of some of the students kind of being relying on their own selves, being home, being kept away because of just the anxiety and mental health stress. So the additional administration would be definitely in need. With that being said, Don, I'm going to turn over the pie charts to you.
Thank you, Dan. So this, our budget for next year that we're proposing is $188,367,855. This is our revenues pie chart broken out. And as I point out every year, we are very dependent on the tax levy and state aid, representing 52 and 42% of our revenues respectively. Kind of looking at the comparison year to year, couple things that are worth noting, and we've talked about this before. These numbers haven't changed dramatically. First, we did get a more significant increase in state aid than we have in the past due to the legislature and governor's commitment to fully fund foundation aid. So that's why you saw general state aid go up 5.52%. Little growth in our pilots. From the last time you looked at this, you'll note that we increased our interest expense. I've talked to the board before about this. Our cash flow is very lumpy. We collect the real estate, the school taxes, and we receive our state aid and critical payments throughout the year. And so sometimes we're sitting on cash balances And with the Fed recently announcing that they're going to increase interest rates, we thought it was appropriate that we increase our forecast for interest income because we anticipate that we'll be able to earn a little more on the district's money over the course of the year. Fund balance, we've increased that as well, and I want to explain that. I should have probably started with, as everybody knows, the legislature and the governor have not reached final state budget yet. They're still negotiating. We are moving forward with our budget because we don't anticipate any significant changes in the budget. However, we do have an opportunity, which I'll talk about on the expenditure side, to increase the amount of money that we spend on these special projects, these little capital projects that we do each year. And the nice thing about those projects are that we get the full state aid for them in the following year. And so we've increased our fund balance to cover the additional expenditure with the hopes that we can replenish our fund balance the following year when we receive that aid. Again, I'll come back to that, but that was the primary reason why we put another $250,000 in fund balance usage in revenues this year. No material change to the other items on here. Our building aid is the final building aid after all of those. You remember we were going through and looking at, which buildings would be, which projects would be done and which final cost reports would be filed and when state aid would kick in. And we're pretty confident we got the right numbers here in the budget. So again, it's $188.4 million budget proposal, an $8.1 million increase in revenues, or about a 4.5% increase. Tax levy. Dan mentioned already that this is our tax cap calculation, which allows the district to take a 3.37% increase, which is at the cap, requires a simple majority, one more yes vote than no vote. And that would result in about an $80 increase on a $100,000 home before STAR. This is our infamous tax chart that we normally show. What's interesting that I want to point out, and it's let's just look at this chart together. So at full value, we want to make sure that if you're living in a house that has a full value of $100,000, whether you're in Cicero, Clay, or Salina, that your taxes are equal. That's the goal. However, the assessed values are different. In Cicero right now, their equalization rate is 96%, meaning that they're not quite at 100%. They're a full value town, but the Board of Equalization has determined that they're a little bit behind on assessments. The Clay is not even a full value assessed town. And Salina is a full value town, and their assessments are about where the Board of Equalization for New York State says they should be. And I want to just emphasize the school district has nothing to do with assessed values and assessments. But you see here that the relative tax rates are our estimate, assuming a 3.37% increase. These are the estimates for each of the towns, but regardless of that, each house worth a full value of $100,000 will pay the same amount of school taxes, regardless of what town you live in. And again, that's about an $80 increase on a $100,000 home before STAR, or about $6.66 a month. Moving on to expenditures. Again, I say this every year, but I think it warrants repeating. We're a people-based business. Most important thing we do is put adults in front of children, and therefore the green and the blue sections of our pie chart here that represent our total expenditures are the biggest pieces, because that's the highest impact thing we can do. We have our debt service number there, which is basically the mortgage on all of our buildings and building projects that we've done over the years. We've got supplies and other, which you'll note on the next chart has increased due to inflation. BOCES, we continue to spend a lot with BOCES. We've got a great partnership with them, and particularly over the last couple of years as we've navigated through COVID, we have really benefited from some of the special services that BOCES provided to us. Contractual expenses have also gone up more than normal due to inflation. The special project, so that's what I was referring to earlier. That's the money we've used over the years to do security projects, reconfiguring lobbies and whatnot. Next year, what we're talking about doing is making some adjustments at Roxborough Road Middle School's lobby to make that entry, which is already a single point of entry, a little more efficient and effective for the staff there, along with some additional work, which we're exploring right now at Roxborough Road to address some of their additional needs. And we'll be talking more about that in the coming weeks. And then we have our equipment budget. So there are some oddities here that I think warrant some explanation. So first of all, why are our salaries only going up $1 million or 1.19%? The reason for that is that in order to balance the budget, we shifted some of our payroll costs to our grant funds, ARP and Cursa. Our benefits, as we've talked about, and I'll have another slide in here to talk more about this. We're watching benefits costs. We have expert consultants provide us with their estimates of benefits, and we just received our third projection from them, and they're still expecting an increase, although the latest projection, honestly, is a little better news than we've reflected in our budget. So I'm happy to report that. And again, we'll talk more about that. But our benefits increase in the budget is only 2.33%. That's lower than we expect benefits to actually go up, but we're kind of trimming our budgets, tightening them up a little bit in order to balance the budget. Debt service, as I said, is that's based on the projects that we've done. We work closely with our fiscal advisors to make sure that number is correct. Again, I mentioned contractual and supplies and other. You see those rates are abnormally high, but that is due to inflation. And our BOCES costs are up. And I've got a slide, I'll talk more about that. But balanced budget, $188.4 million worth of expenditures that equal our revenues, $8.1 million increase, or about 4.5%. Talked a lot about inflation. This was the chart through February. We'll see how this plays out over the next year, but you can see that inflation is about 7.9%, and that makes our challenge that much more difficult when we're living under a tax cap where the inflation component can only be 2%. I think I've covered a lot of these in previous meetings, but some of the bigger expenditures that we have are TRS and ERS. Again, we're lucky to be in two very well managed pension funds that are fully funded. Salaries and wages reflect our contractual increases. Fuel costs, where the fuel costs have gone up a lot. We're fortunate that we get transportation aid that covers a lot of our fuel, of our transportation costs up to about 80%. So we still are bearing a significant increase in fuel, but some of that's offset by transportation aid. Energy costs, we work through a consortium called NISMIC, the New York State Municipal Energy Cooperative, to buy all of our energy. I think with that strategy and also with the energy performance contract that we'll talk about in a moment, I think the district is doing about as much as we can to manage through high energy costs that we're seeing out in the market today. One just timing item on the bottom there, AED replacement. As you know, the law came out that we have to have AEDs to support, to be in all of our buildings to support our athletic programs, and they need to be replaced this year. And that's just an unusual expense that we'll be incurring once every 5 years or so. Medical benefits. The projections through the second run was about 10.8%. I can say today with some level of confidence that it'll be lower than 10.8%. How low, I don't know. We'll know more in a month or so as we work with our consultant to establish our premium equivalent rates. But as I said, we've been able to minimize the impact on the budget by building a little bit of budget surplus over the years in anticipation that we're going to have a year when benefits costs spike, and this may be the year. Just reminding everybody the details of Cursa and ARP. So these funds are not part of our general fund budget, but they're playing a big role this year in helping us meet the needs as they were intended, meet the needs of our students and staff who have been impacted by COVID-19. And so Cursa is a $7.8 million of funds that must be spent over a 3-year period ended 9/30/24. You can see some of the items there that we're going to spend Cursa funds on. The ARP, the American Rescue Plan, is $11.5 million. Again, must be spent over a 3-year period ended 9/30/24. And you can see the items we've listed there as well. And this has been a constant conversation among our leaders, and we take any feedback we can get on best ways to use these funds. And we're trying to, again, meet the needs of our school community as we understand them. And there is a little bit of flexibility as to how these funds are spent. So the energy performance contract, as you saw from our earlier slides, that energy costs are going up. Saw that in the inflation slide. And so one of the things that we're just so fortunate that it just worked out for us that we were able to get a NYSERDA grant that allowed us to analyze our buildings and look for opportunities to improve our energy consumption or lower our energy consumption. And we identified about $7.5 million worth of improvements in lighting, heating, and general energy efficiency that will be fully aidable at 85.3% through New York State Building Aid. And we're going to use $1.1 million of our fund balance. So there's going to be no additional cost to the local taxpayer, no increase in taxes to do this. And the savings from the improvements will reduce the district's energy costs in the future, thereby, again, protecting our budgets and protecting the taxpayer in the future from, above tax cap increases. So the bidding for the project would occur this summer, again, subject to the voters' approval. And we hope that it would be, the work would be completed by the end of 24. The chillers at the junior high, I've explained this, but it warrants one more explanation. We did this great building condition survey where we looked at all of our buildings, and unfortunately, we've got a lot of infrastructure and some of it is at the end of its life. We expected that the chillers, the primary component of the HVAC system at the junior high, would not need to be replaced in the short term. And as soon as we made that decision, Murphy's Law, the chillers kind of started to go on the fritz, and they really have been a real challenge for us. And it's a large building. It was designed to be air conditioned. We host our special ed summer school there in the summer. We have a lot of students at risk, special ed students that attend school in that building that where their IEP requires air conditioning. We have worked with our architects and engineers to design a project that will allow us to replace those chillers. It's a $1.4 million expenditure. Again, 83.5% building aid. We're going to take the difference out of our fund balance. So there'll be no additional cost to the local taxpayer, no tax increase. And not only will the building be more comfortable and the system be more effective, but it'll be more efficient to operate. And so we hope that the voters will support that referendum as well. Fund balance, I wanted to share this slide with you once again, just to point out, we've talked now several times how we're using fund balance. Remember that the Comptroller's Office likes us to have a 4% balance. We have a little higher than 4% now. We're going to use some of that excess and hopefully some excess created when the school year ended June of 22 to fund these projects we've identified. But I think our fund balance is in decent shape at this time, and that's what the slide's intended to show. Reserves, the same thing. We've worked hard to get the known liabilities of the district properly reserved so to protect us from surprises down the road. These are our reserve balances. Just to refresh everybody's memory, the voters approved the use of $3 million from the debt service fund to support the building renovations on their December 8th, 2021 referendum. And that's why you see debt service fund there drop from $3,434,000 to just $434,000. Vehicle bonding proposition, we're going to do the same thing we've done each year. We're going to go out and we're going to look at our fleet and replace the oldest and least reliable buses. That's 10 65-passenger gasoline engine buses, 2 42-passenger buses that we use for special needs students. These are buses with wheelchair lifts and hydraulic lifts and wheelchair positions, as well as air conditioning. And we're also going to purchase 5 M&O vehicles to support that operation. The cost of this was $1.8 million. The tax impact after transportation aid is approximately $202.61 per year for a $100,000 house before STAR. Here's some pictures of our transportation folks. I just wanted to point out a couple things on this slide. We've talked a lot about the social emotional well-being of our students, and I've had occasion now to get on the buses when the kids aren't wearing their masks, and these school buses really are little communities, neighborhood communities of students. Our drivers take a lot of pride in making sure kids get to school safe, on time, and in a good frame of mind to learn. We've all heard about the tight job market. Well, Matt Conti and his team have worked really hard. The picture there of the job fair advertisement. We've conducted job fairs. We've advertised. We've beat the bushes really, and we've got a great crew of drivers and attendants that we're just really proud of. And the relationship between our transportation department and our buildings just couldn't be better. They work really well together to make sure there's a good handoff of students, to school when they arrive and from school on the way home. Once again, we work closely with the Salina Library to make sure that their proposition is properly stated on on the ballots. And you can see they have a modest increase in their budget as well. And that'll be included for those voters from Salina. Vote and election is Tuesday, May 17th. The usual setup where those north of 481 will vote at Cicero Elementary and those south will vote at this building, the district office. And we encourage folks to come to one of the special registration events this on May 3rd, either here or at Cicero L, and to contact our district clerk, Jill, if there's in order to register between now and then. This is our calendar. So we are at the April 4th meeting where we hope the board will adopt the budget tonight, and we'll answer any questions you have as a result of tonight's presentation. Thank you.
Questions? I know this has been in front of us quite a bit, and it's been in front of the budget subcommittee. So I've seen a lot, and there was some supplementary information in the Friday letter also. So I don't know if anybody had any questions about that. I mean, I think, as we've said several times, we were fortunate with the rescue money that we've had in those 2 pots that's come to an end in 2 years. So I think you may have, and I just wanted to mention this in case there's comments. I think you all read that we have a handful of positions we're putting in with those funds that we're going to want to look at ways to sustain that when we come to the end of this 2-year cycle. So that's just something that's going to be a challenge for us sitting here. So I wanted to just mention that. I did just had a question as it came to me. You mentioned this good amount of state aid and you showed that pie graph in the beginning. Since you've been here, Don, how has our pie graph shifted? And what I mean by that is the state aid portion versus, because we're still shouldering the burden of that even.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think the trend has been consistently, and it hasn't been over the 10 years since I've been here, it's been over a 20-year period where more and more of the burden of funding schools has shifted to the local taxpayer. So ever so slightly, you take a little percentage off state aid and you add it to the local taxpayer. And that has been a consistent trend for the last 20 years.
Thank you. But I mean, I'm pleased with what we've done here. I'm just always cautiously optimistic as we look into the future. Because I know there were a lot of requests. We couldn't do everything, but I think we're in a good place. Questions, comments?
Sure. I was going to wait to the comment area, but I'd like to do it now. First of all, I believe that the state said that with our absentee ballots, you still can put down COVID. I believe that was stay last week. So I know a couple people that will be doing that. So we need to let our friends know that absentee ballots now are still available for those that are afraid of difficulty of coming in. I can't say enough about our team, our administrative team here at North Syracuse. I know if I just use our superintendent's name, he would say it's a team work. So thank you to Dan, Don, Chris, and Jason for all of your hard work. We've had presentation after presentation, so there really aren't any surprises into this budget from any of us. The things that make me happy as a former teacher, and I know Dr. Kramer's got to be happy with the class sizes. They are so different than when I was teaching at both KWS Bear Road. And that was a thing today. So I just had to tell Jason. And Cicero, thank you. Because it's difficult to get those sizes down and to get, as Don says, to put adults in front of kids. It's an overwhelming child-centered budget. It is thinking about all our students, whether it's safety, ENL, SEL, all of that. You know, it is a child-centered budget. And when we go out and do presentations that need to be emphasized because we're here for the kids. And what I look at the nurses and what we've done there because I know how overworked they are. And they're still overworked, but we have a supervisor that is an actual nurse that can go in and help these people. AIS for math. For years, AIS has been for reading with a little bit of math for grades 3 and above, but now we're getting right down into first grade, second grade, and helping the needy kids for math. I am, I'm for the teachers and their support, but also middle school principals. We've needed this. I'm not ashamed to say I was on the board when we eliminated these because of budget concerns, but they're needed. We need these administrators. I also want to thank you during the year. Mary and I are very happy, I know Mary is, about a director of math. The school district wants to move to another step in math. And Mary has been asking that since she first got on the board, and we're there. I know Michael, Director of Technology, we've wanted that. We've wanted that in the budget, and it's in there. And I feel that both the people that the school district hired in those places are doing well. All right, my concerns, just a few concerns, but I am overwhelmingly for this budget. I think our president has mentioned the political climate of this country. It's a possibility things are going to change next November into January, and it could affect us. We're looking at a wonderful budget with lots of funding that might not have been. I remember being here last year, and we were so nervous about what was going to happen. So we, as a board, please, let's watch the political climate. I know one thing that I wanted in the budget, and I understand 100%, but down the road, we need to look at a director of fine arts in this district. We can't now, and you explained it very well, we have limited funding, but we need this. And let me tell you why. Roxborough Road Middle School will not be having a production this weekend. Nobody stepped forth. Is that fair to the Roxborough Road elementary kids that Gillette had one that I'm sorry I missed, but it's not fair to those kids. Also, I believe there will not be a marching band. So Ms. Siemens, the only students she has will be the ones that there will be no feeder program. We need to look at this program, the arts, the musics, we're all going to go to that special day and all our administrators will be there putting out budget information when we go to the high school and see what our kids do. But I feel there needs to be leadership. I know it's not now, but I want the board to know that we need to keep this on our horoscope. So thank you to all of you, Chris, Jason, Don, and Dan, for a great budget.
I have a comment. Excuse me. Ditto what Mr. Crabtree said. You're such a good board member. You have your finger on the pulse of everything, and that's excellent. And this was my first year being part of the budget subcommittee, and I love how things were highlighted, like, this is where our mouths are, this is where our view is, so this is where the money goes, this is where the money follows. And just my always plug for the SEL, it's just part of who I am, and that's part of it. And I also was very happy to see that you were looking at ratios. You're looking at ratios of students to teachers to administrators, so they could support those teachers. If you got one administrator with, a ton of kids, well, they're not going to be able to adequately support the teachers who are helping our kids. And I even at one point, maybe during the discussions, I heard of things that at this point were not funded. And some of the reasoning behind it is that it was upon this administration's hearing of the teachers saying, enough. We can't do more right now. And I heard that come through when we were talking about, what gets funded, what doesn't. And, this may be great, but right now we just need to, dial it back, get back to some normalcy. And I thank you for bringing me through this process, and it's been great working with this. And I'm just really excited about it.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Yes, Mrs. Scanlon.
So just quickly, I also agree with everything that was said by Bob and Beth. But also want to thank you for putting so much detail in this budget and supporting, everything where we're putting our money and focusing on the needs of our students and our teachers to get things back to, where they should be. We really see that focus in this budget, and I appreciate that. And also working on the energy change, the issues, addressing that because of the energy costs, and putting that forward where we can do something now to help with future budgets. I appreciate that as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, then this will be before us a little bit later in the agenda to move, and we will then act upon it. Comments from the audience. Last I knew, we didn't have anybody registered to speak. Did you have any words for us? Okay, thank you. Board of Education Committee reports. I know we have a policy and a legislative meeting this week. Did you have any, or did I just give you your comments?
Yeah,
I'm
that was
sorry.
it. So our policy committee meeting is tomorrow at 5 p.m. via Zoom.
And Mr. Crabtree.
Well, we're going right after Mary the next day, Wednesday at 5 o'clock. It will be a short meeting this time, but the emphasis will be Don doing a synopsis of the budget. But Lori Cook will be talking to us about how to go out into the community and really publicize this budget. She's got some ideas that we have talked about. And also Mr. Clary, who has been very vital in our committee with some of his ideas on how to publicize. Because I am concerned, if you looked at your onboard, I know I like to talk, but if you looked at your onboard, the number of people voting has really drastically dropped. I mean, I was really excited in December for the number of people in our district that voted for our propositions. But another district close to us, they had a huge referendum and, they only got 500 people to vote. So it's been going down. So the more we can get out there and do the kind of presentations that have been done here, the better we'll be. So that's what we'll be talking about.
And could you just reference right after that, we'll be moving in those who are going to the BOCES?
All right. So I'm going into my Board of Education comments.
Okay, I'm sorry.
The annual meeting for OCM BOCES will be this Wednesday night. Dinner will begin at 6, but it goes from 6 to 7. It will be catered by Santangelo's, and you don't want to miss that. And then there will be a very short meeting by Dr. Cook and Deputy Superintendent and our business official about the administrative budget. They'll go through everything, which leads me into our next board meeting. On April 18th, we will be voting as a board on just the administrative budget. I'll make sure you get that. So you can see how much North Syracuse pays compared to West Hill and other school districts. And also on candidates for the next 3 years. And I appreciate your nomination.
And I received that today from the clerk.
Yeah.
So we have the resolution and the candidates.
Here's the thing.
yes.
If you are still interested in going, I know Mark is going, you're going. Are you going, Michael? If you're really interested in going, it'll be over by 8 o'clock, probably before. Let Connie know and she will send it over to Teresa. Connie, I talked to Connie, even, she still uses her email and she'll send it over tomorrow. But you please let her know, I would say before you leave tonight, because it is a nice evening. There are already 63 people signed up. That includes superintendents and board members. It's kind of neat to see what other school districts are doing.
Thank you. Superintendent comments, Mr. Bowles.
Thank you, Paul. Last week, we continued 3 through 8 state testing. It had kind of dropped off, but we did that. And this week, we will do makeups for ELA up until the 8th. Following that, after the break, we'll have math state testing in April from the 26th to May 4th. One thing that happened last week that many of the parents were thrilled was Honor Society at CNS took place again in person. So it was a wonderful event that everyone present really enjoyed. There was something that took place and it looked like it was over the weekend. Onondaga County Music Educators Association presented the 2022 All-County Jazz Festival at Marcellus High School. CNS had 9 students audition and get accepted into 2 senior high groups. Seniors Katie Wilhite, Lily Thorne, Ava Tyler, Addison Romano, Ryan Hill, sophomore Aiden Hannes. And then we had seniors in high jazz ensemble, Kevin Gonsi, and JJ Clark and Colin Hong. So all of those students performed with Danielle Rausa leading the way. So I wanted to make sure that we were recognizing them as well. We did receive some press that was on the news, and we had some of our students highlighted. But again, you saw in our budget what we're doing for SEL and some of the preventions in mental health. So again, I want to thank the board for their support with all of that. And finally, spring sports have gotten underway. We've seen lacrosse, baseball, softball, and spring track. Again, we have some wonderful students that are performing and they are excited to get out. Hopefully the weather will get a little bit nicer. It looks like starting next week, but all of those things are underway and you just see the smiles on kids' faces when they're out there. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bowles. And Board of Education comments, if I can just add a couple quick ones. I did send everybody an email. I had a conversation with the New York State School Boards Association member relations person. So I sent that one piece just because there was a link to it and it kind of caught my attention. Because there's a lot of strange things going on around the state. I think our community's been great. They haven't fallen into the trap of a lot of the manufactured crises that some others have that have impacted school board meetings, but other things in that conversation, they talked about that if you just go to the New York State School Board's website, there are resources, there are webinars that are free for us as members on various topics. They still are having some in-person workshops, not that many. They've backed off and staying with webinars for the most part, but they're bringing something back. He mentioned to me that I've never been to because I haven't been around long enough, but it was a new board member and veteran board member workshop that they do in the summertime. Now, they don't have dates out for that yet or information, but I wanted you to be aware of that in case you want to look on their website or ask me. That's supposed to come up in sometime in August. And they also do a law conference every year at various sites around the state that is in person. Other than that, most of their offerings now are webinar based. And I think I may have mentioned this, they're excited to come back to Syracuse for the New York State School Board's conference next year for the first time in quite a while. And that'd be a great opportunity for some of us to go at a very low cost because it's right next door. So
something about student work. Maybe, I don't know, I hate to put more on the administration, but wouldn't it be wonderful if we had a display of whatever we wanted to do? We got that either yesterday or the day before. Anyone, and I will send that link to Mr. Bowles. Maybe we can put something up, North Syracuse Central School District. It would be great.
yeah, I'm hesitating to say what I'm thinking because I'll put more work on somebody, but they're also just put out a call for any small group performances.
Oh,
If
yeah.
anybody in the area was interested in applying for that.
Yep.
And there is a link there that I can share in case somebody wants to look at that, but that's a great idea. Other comments? Okay, we will move on to routine action items. I'll look for a motion for consideration or approval of the minutes of the March 21st meeting. Motion from Ms. Scanlon, second from Mr. Thorne. The minutes are before us. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Thank you. Motion for B, C, and D, please. Motion from Mr. Moody Woosick, second from Ms. Scanlon. Those are the classifications of the disabled students for school, for preschool, and for home instruction. Those three are before us at this time. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed, and that is carried. And acknowledgement of business officer reports for February of 22. Motion, please. Motion from Mr. Thorne, second from Dr. Kramer. That's before us. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed, and that is carried. And the formal adoption of the 22-23 budget, if I could have a motion to place that before us. Motion from Mr. Crabtree, second from Mr. Marizio. Okay, this is the last time to ask questions or discuss. No, you can ask questions anytime, I'm sure, but any other questions or comments, concerns with the budget that's before us? We will be acting on that. Okay, seeing none. This is a roll call vote. Aye.
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 Okay, thank you very much. That budget is carried unanimously. Motion, please, for B, acknowledgement of the 22-23 payroll reports. Motion from Mr. Thorne, second from Mrs. Scanlon. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed, and that is carried. C, ratification of the North Syracuse Per Diem Professional Association contract. Motion from Dr. Kramer, second from Mrs. Scanlon. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed, and that is carried. Appointment of school physicians and establishment of fees for July for the organizational meeting at 21. This is an amendment. Motion from Mr. Thorne, second from Mr. Moody Woosick. Thank you. All in favor? Opposed, and that is carried. Acknowledgement of a gift. Motion, place that before us, please. Motion from Mrs. Scanlon, second from Mr. Crabtree. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed, and that is carried. And our famous declaration of non-marketable and marketable supplies, motion from Mr. Herman, second from Mr. Thorne. We have desks with drawers that are non-marketable, and some other odds and ends in there. That's the discussion, I guess. All in favor? Opposed, and thank you. And I'd like to acknowledge 4 retirements this evening. We have Catherine Smith, teaching assistant, retiring with 15.8 years of service. Michael Buonacore, school bus driver, retiring with 16 years of service. Eric Johnson, security guard, retiring with 20 years of service. Kathy Lubner, typist 2, retiring with 29 years of service. So I wish them all the best of health and well-being in retirement. Motion, please, for instructional personnel report A to place before us. Motion from Mr. Thorne, second from Mrs. Scanlon. Any discussion or questions?
To explain, I know he explained it to me earlier. It has all the Carl W. Siley Bear Road staff leaving Lake Shore to go back to Bear Road. Why we have to vote on it?
It's because they are technically a change in location. Anytime we have any staff that does a change in location, it goes on a board agenda and that triggers for the budget code for the individual employee that their budget code is coming out of the correct building.
But we did, yeah, but we still considered them Bear Road there, though. Okay, that's what I thought. I thought that was interesting also, but any other comments? Okay, seeing none, all in favor? Opposed, that is carried. And support staff personnel report B, motion from Mr. Thorne, second from Dr. Kramer. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed, and that is carried. I'd like to make a motion, move into executive session for the purpose of reviewing the employment records of 4 individuals with no action to follow. If I get a second from Mr. Maurizio, any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed, that is carried. And a motion for adjournment, please. Motion from Mr. Moody Woosick, second from Mr. Thorne. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed, that is carried. We are adjourned. 6:56. 7. Did you have fun, Connie?